Emma stood in the master bedroom, the late afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows. Dust motes danced in the golden light, but her attention was fixed on the delicate gold necklace in her hands. It was a gift from Daniel on their 10th wedding anniversary, a decade marked by shared dreams, quiet mornings, and promises of forever. But now, as she studied the intricate pendant, its shimmering surface seemed to mock her. The necklace, once a symbol of their love, felt alien in her hands, as if it belonged to another life. Daniel had been growing distant for months, his warmth replaced by a cool indifference she couldn't ignore. Emma let the necklace slip from her fingers and stared at herself in the mirror. Her reflection looked weary, the faint lines at the corners of her eyes betraying sleepless nights spent wondering where he was. She thought back to last Thursday, the night her suspicions first solidified into something more sinister. As she was tidying the living room, Daniel's suit jacket had slipped off the back of a chair. When she picked it up, a receipt fell from the pocket. Curious, she'd unfolded it, expecting to find a mundane coffee shop charge or a gas station bill. Instead, her eyes fell on the elegant black and gold logo of the Westwood Hotel. Emma traced the printed words on the receipt as if touching them could reveal their secrets. The date on the receipt matched a night Daniel had claimed to be working late, and the name? Lena Carter. The name wasn't one Emma recognized, but it echoed in her mind, heavy and sharp. That night, Emma barely slept, her thoughts churning with questions. Who was Lena Carter? What was Daniel doing at a hotel with her? The next evening, Emma watched Daniel carefully as he came through the door. His suit was immaculate, as always, and he carried himself with the same effortless confidence that had first drawn her to him. But as he kissed her cheek, she noticed the faintest trace of something unfamiliar, a musky floral scent that didn't belong to her. "How was work?" she asked, keeping her tone casual. "Long," Daniel replied, his hands deftly loosening his tie. "Busy night at the Westwood Hotel?" The question tumbled out before Emma could stop herself. Daniel froze, his hand hovering near the coat rack. Slowly, he turned to face her, his expression carefully blank. "What are you talking about?" Emma held up the receipt, her hand trembling. "This! I found it in your jacket." For a moment, Daniel didn't speak. His eyes darted to the receipt, then back to her. "You've been going through my things now?" he said, his voice low and even. "Don't turn this around on me," Emma shot back, her voice cracking. "Who is Lena Carter?" Daniel sighed, his face hardening. "She's a client. I met her there for dinner, that's all." "You expect me to believe that?" Emma's voice rose, her frustration boiling over. "You don't take clients to boutique hotels, Daniel." Over the next few days, Emma replayed the confrontation in her mind. Daniel had insisted there was nothing going on, but the doubt refused to leave her. His behavior didn't help. He seemed even more guarded, always keeping his phone close, his responses clipped. One evening, while Daniel was showering, Emma found herself drawn to his briefcase. It was a sleek leather bag meticulously organized, just like Daniel. She hesitated for a moment, her heart pounding in her chest, before opening it. At first, there was nothing unusual. Neatly filed papers, a laptop, a business card holder. But then, tucked beneath a stack of documents, Emma found something unexpected. A second phone. Her hands trembled as she unlocked the screen. The messages confirmed her worst fears. "Can't stop thinking about last night." "When can I see you again?" "Same time tomorrow?" Emma felt her stomach drop. Each text was a dagger, cutting through the fragile remnants of her trust. She scrolled further, her breath catching as she saw photos of Lena, a striking woman with dark, wavy hair and a radiant smile. In one, she and Daniel sat together in a cozy booth, their heads close, their expressions relaxed and intimate. The room seemed to spin around Emma. She wanted to scream, to cry, to confront him immediately, but instead, she carefully placed the phone back where she had found it. She needed more than anger. She needed a plan. The confrontation came on a Saturday night. Daniel had just returned from the office, and Emma sat waiting in the living room, the damning photos and messages saved on her own phone. "Emma," Daniel greeted her, surprised to find her sitting in the dimly lit room. "Why are you up?" She stood, her heart racing, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. "We need to talk." "What's this about?" Daniel asked, his tone wary. Emma stepped closer, her eyes burning with unshed tears. "Lena Carter, the Westwood Hotel. Your second phone." Daniel's face paled, his usual composure faltering. "Emma, let me explain." "Explain what?" she interrupted, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and heartbreak. "Explain how you've been lying to me, sneaking around behind my back?" Daniel sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's not what you think. Lena is a client, yes, but it's complicated." "Complicated," Emma repeated, her voice rising. "Do you think I'm stupid? I saw the messages, Daniel. I saw the photos." For a moment, Daniel said nothing. Then his shoulders sagged, and he met her gaze. "I didn't mean for this to happen," he admitted. "It just got out of hand." Emma's vision blurred with tears. "So it's true. You're cheating on me." "It wasn't supposed to be like this," Daniel murmured, his voice tinged with regret. Emma's heart shattered as the man she had loved for over a decade stood before her, admitting his betrayal. "I don't even know who you are anymore," she whispered. She turned and walked out of the room, leaving Daniel alone with the silence of his mistakes. Emma sat in her car outside the house, the silence inside her vehicle as heavy as the storm brewing in her mind. Her tears had dried, leaving only a searing resolve. This wasn't going to end with her walking away quietly. Daniel had shattered their life together, and Emma decided he needed to know exactly what that felt like. She picked up her phone and opened her contacts. Among them was a name she hadn't thought about in years: Adrian Becker. Adrian had been her first love, a fiery romance in college that had ended when she met Daniel. Adrian's intensity had always unnerved her, but now, that same quality seemed like the weapon she needed. She scrolled through their old messages, her finger hesitating before she hit call. The phone rang twice before a familiar voice answered. "Emma?" "Adrian," she said, her voice steady despite the whirlwind inside her. "I need a favor. Are you free for dinner?" Adrian leaned back in his chair, his sharp eyes scanning Emma as she recounted the events of the past few months. They were seated in an upscale bar downtown, its dim lighting casting shadows that seemed to mirror her mood. "I can't believe he'd do that to you," Adrian said, his voice laced with controlled anger. "After everything you've built together." Emma sipped her wine, letting his words sink in. She hadn't realized how much she needed someone to validate her anger until now. "I want to make him pay," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. Adrian's lips curled into a sly smile. "Pay how?" Emma hesitated, the enormity of her thoughts pressing down on her. "I don't know yet, but I want him to hurt like I do. I want him to lose what he thinks he can't live without." Adrian leaned forward, his hands clasped on the table. "You came to the right person." Over the next week, Emma and Adrian began to weave their plan. Adrian, now a successful entrepreneur, still had the connections and charisma that had drawn Emma to him years ago. Together, they dug into Daniel's life, his business dealings, his finances, and even his mistress, Lena Carter. It turned out that Lena wasn't as pristine as her photos suggested. Adrian discovered that she was part of a chain of illicit client services tied to high-profile men in Daniel's industry. The deeper they dug, the more dirt they uncovered. Emma felt a strange exhilaration as they pieced it all together. For once, she wasn't the one sitting in the shadows. Their final plan was set into motion during Daniel's upcoming gala, a high-stakes charity event where his firm would be unveiling a major partnership. Daniel had been pressuring Emma to attend, pretending their marriage was intact to keep up appearances. Emma had agreed, but this time, she wasn't going alone. The night of the gala arrived. Emma stood before the mirror, fastening the necklace Daniel had given her. It sparkled under the vanity lights, a cruel reminder of the life they had built, and the one she was about to dismantle. When Adrian arrived to pick her up, he whistled low. "You look stunning. Ready to burn it all down?" Emma smiled, her reflection revealing not sadness, but a newfound determination. "Ready." The gala was hosted in a grand hall downtown, its entrance lined with flashing cameras and elegantly dressed attendees. Emma and Adrian entered arm in arm, immediately catching the attention of several people, including Daniel. From across the room, Emma saw his jaw tighten as he spotted her. He excused himself from a conversation and made his way toward them, his face a mask of polite confusion. "Emma," he greeted her, his tone strained. "Who's this?" "This is Adrian," Emma said smoothly, her voice dripping with confidence. "An old friend who's been helping me rebuild." Adrian extended a hand, his grin sharp. "Nice to meet you, Daniel. Emma's told me so much about you." Daniel's eyes darted between them, suspicion clouding his features. Before he could respond, a commotion erupted near the stage. Emma and Adrian had planned everything meticulously. As Daniel turned to see what was happening, the projection screen behind the stage flickered to life. Emma and Adrian had planned everything, and it was done now. But not before Lena had a confession to make. Animal bodies were pretty potent, just shape-shifting beings, but there are so many couples, and then the room fell silent as the evidence of his affair played out for all to see. Gasps and whispers rippled through the crowd, the murmur growing louder with each passing moment. Daniel's face turned ashen as he realized what was happening. He spun back to Emma, his expression a mix of fury and panic. "What did you do?" he hissed. Emma raised an eyebrow, her lips curving into a calm smile. "Nothing you didn't deserve." Adrian chuckled beside her. "You should really be more careful about who you trust." As security scrambled to stop the projection, Emma and Adrian slipped out the back door. The night air was cool and freeing as they walked toward Adrian's car, leaving chaos in their wake. In the weeks that followed, Daniel's world unraveled. The gala scandal not only exposed his affair, but also led to investigations into his professional dealings. His mistress, Lena, disappeared, leaving him to deal with the fallout alone. Emma, meanwhile, began to rebuild her life. With Adrian's help, she filed for divorce, taking control of the assets Daniel had tried so hard to hide. As she stood in her new apartment one evening, looking out over the city skyline, Emma felt something she hadn't in months. Peace. She had walked through the fire, and though the scars would remain, she had emerged stronger. "Burn it all down," Adrian had said, and she had. Weeks turned into months. Daniel's life had crumbled, his once impeccable reputation tarnished by the gala scandal. His firm severed ties with him, and whispers about his misconduct spread rapidly. For someone who had built his life on appearances, this downfall was devastating. Daniel moved into a modest apartment on the outskirts of the city. The spacious, elegant home he and Emma had shared now belonged solely to her. Most of their mutual friends distanced themselves, unwilling to associate with a man branded as deceitful both in business and marriage. On a rainy afternoon, Daniel stared at his reflection in the bathroom mirror. The man staring back was a shadow of who he used to be. Unkempt hair, a scruffy beard, and hollow eyes. He hadn't spoken to Emma since the divorce was finalized, but her face haunted him. She had been calm and unyielding during their last conversation, her words cutting deeper than she could have imagined. "You always thought you were untouchable," she had said, sliding the divorce papers toward him. "Now you know what it feels like to be broken." As he sat in his dimly lit living room, nursing a whiskey, Daniel picked up his phone and scrolled through old photos of them together, smiling at the beach, laughing at dinner parties, their 10th anniversary trip to Paris. He wondered if there was any part of her that missed him. For Emma, life was moving forward, but not without its challenges. Her relationship with Adrian had grown closer in the weeks following the gala. He was always there, helping her navigate legal proceedings, introducing her to new connections, and even accompanying her to social events where her newfound independence was celebrated. Yet, something about Adrian unsettled her. He was charming, confident, and fiercely loyal, but his intensity sometimes bordered on possessiveness. One evening, as they sat in a cozy corner of her new apartment, Adrian brought up Daniel. "I heard he's hit rock bottom," Adrian said casually, swirling the wine in his glass. Emma raised an eyebrow. "And how would you know that?" Adrian smirked. "I have my sources. He's been trying to rebuild his network, but no one's willing to touch him. You've made quite an impression, Emma." Emma frowned. "That wasn't the point. I didn't want to ruin his entire life, just... Emma frowned, unsure how to finish the sentence. "Just what?" Adrian pressed, leaning closer. "Just make him see what he'd done to me," Emma admitted softly. Adrian's gaze darkened. "He deserved worse, Emma. Men like him don't change unless they're crushed first." The intensity in his voice sent a shiver down her spine. She began to wonder if Adrian's motivations were as simple as helping her, or if he had his own reasons for destroying Daniel. Emma's new life brought new routines. One afternoon, as she walked through a quiet park, she spotted someone sitting on a bench under a tree, hunched over. She froze when she realized it was Daniel. He looked up, their eyes locking for the first time in months. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "Emma," Daniel said finally, his voice hoarse. "Daniel," she replied, her tone cautious. He gestured to the bench. "Can we talk?" Emma hesitated but sat down, keeping a careful distance. I wanted to apologize," Daniel began, his gaze fixed on the ground. "Not for what happened at the gala. I deserved that. But for everything before it. For how I treated you. For lying to you." Emma didn't respond, her emotions a mix of anger and pity. "I lost everything," Daniel continued, "and in the silence, I've had a lot of time to think. You didn't just hurt me, Emma. You saved me. I see that now." His words surprised her. She had expected deflection, excuses, maybe even anger. But this? "I didn't do it to save you," Emma said, her voice steady. "I did it because I needed to save myself." Daniel nodded slowly. "I know. And you were right to. I was selfish. I thought I could have it all. And now, I have nothing." For the first time, Emma saw vulnerability in him that she hadn't seen in years. Later that night, Emma couldn't shake her encounter with Daniel. She poured herself a glass of wine and sat on her balcony, staring at the city lights. Her thoughts were interrupted by a message from Adrian. "Dinner tomorrow? Let's celebrate your freedom." Emma hesitated before replying. "Sure." The next evening, Adrian arrived with his usual charm, but Emma felt a shift in their dynamic. As they dined at a high-end restaurant, Adrian's mood seemed unusually tense. "I saw Daniel today," Emma said suddenly, watching his reaction. Adrian's grip tightened on his wine glass. "Why would you talk to him?" "It wasn't planned," Emma replied. "We ran into each other. He apologized." Adrian scoffed. "And you believed him?" "I'm not sure what to believe," Emma admitted. Adrian leaned closer, his voice dropping. "Emma, he's manipulating you. Don't let him. Worm his way back in." The intensity in Adrian's tone set off alarm bells. She realized she knew very little about him, why he had been so eager to help her, why he hated Daniel so much. That night, as Adrian kissed her goodbye, Emma resolved to find out. Over the next few days, Emma began digging into Adrian's past. What she discovered left her reeling. Adrian's connection to Daniel wasn't a coincidence. Years ago, Daniel had outbid Adrian's firm on a massive project, effectively ruining Adrian's early career. Adrian hadn't come back into her life to help her. He'd been using her as a pawn in his long-con revenge. Furious, Emma confronted him. "You didn't care about me, did you? This was all about Daniel." Adrian's expression darkened. "It started that way, yes, but you're wrong if you think I don't care now. Emma, we're the same. We both wanted justice." "No," Emma said firmly, stepping back. "You wanted destruction. I wanted freedom. There's a difference." As she walked away, Emma realized she had been trapped in someone else's game, but now she had the pieces to break free. For good. Emma stood on the balcony of her penthouse apartment, the city lights twinkling like stars. The cold wind brushed her face, but she didn't flinch. For the first time in years, she felt free. Truly free. She had severed ties with Daniel, unmasked Adrian's deceit, and left the rubble of her old life behind. Now, it was her time to build something new, something entirely her own. The next morning, Emma opened her laptop and finalized the purchase of her new business venture, a boutique PR firm specializing in crisis management. She had learned enough about manipulation, image control, and resilience over the past year to know she could master the art of rebuilding reputations, starting with her own. Her first client was herself. Emma's days quickly filled with strategy meetings, branding workshops, and networking events. Every move was calculated, every connection deliberate. She wasn't just surviving, she was thriving. Her personal life became just as intentional. She joined a yoga class, began volunteering at a shelter for women rebuilding their lives, and spent evenings exploring the city's art galleries and cultural events. She no longer waited for someone to complete her. She was whole on her own. One evening, as she prepared for a panel discussion she had been invited to moderate, Emma received a call from her lawyer. "Emma, I wanted to update you," the lawyer began. "The final settlement with Daniel's firm has come through. You've been awarded the share of assets we were fighting for." Emma smiled. "Thank you. Make sure the funds go directly to the charity account I set up." "You don't want to keep any of it?" "No," Emma replied firmly. "I don't need his money. I need to know it's doing good in the world." The lawyer chuckled. "You're one of a kind, Emma." Emma hung up and glanced at herself in the mirror. The woman staring back was unrecognizable from the one who had sat in tears months ago, shattered by betrayal. Though Emma had moved on, the echoes of her past occasionally resurfaced. At one of her events, she spotted Daniel lingering near the entrance. He looked hesitant, almost lost, as if he didn't belong in the polished world she now commanded. He caught her eye and gave her a small, tentative smile. She nodded in acknowledgement, but didn't approach him. After the event, as she was leaving, Daniel appeared by her side. "Emma," he began softly, "can I talk to you for a moment?" She stopped, her heels clicking against the marble floor. "What do you want, Daniel?" "I wanted to say thank you," he said, "for everything, for showing me who I really was and who I wasn't. You were right to leave me. I've been working to fix what I broke." Emma studied him for a moment. He seemed genuine, his arrogance replaced by humility, but she wasn't the woman who needed his validation anymore. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Daniel," she said, her voice calm and steady, "but I've already found what I need." She walked away, leaving him standing in the shadows. Months turned into a year, and Emma's PR firm flourished. Her reputation as a fierce, compassionate, and strategic leader spread quickly, attracting high-profile clients and media attention. One day, Emma was invited to speak at a global summit on resilience and reinvention. Standing on stage before thousands of people, she shared her journey, not as a tale of betrayal, but as a story of empowerment. "I learned that life doesn't end when someone betrays you," she told the audience. "It begins when you decide to reclaim your power. We are not defined by the shadows cast by others. We are defined by the light we choose to step into." The crowd erupted into applause, but Emma's focus was on the strength she felt in her own words. Emma returned home that evening exhausted but exhilarated. She poured herself a glass of wine and stood on her balcony, looking out over the bustling city. Her phone buzzed with a message from a woman named Claire, someone she had met at the shelter. "You inspire me, Emma. Thank you for showing us what's possible." Emma smiled. Her journey had started with pain, but it had led her to a place of purpose. She was no longer defined by her past or the men who had tried to control her. She was Emma, the architect of her own destiny. And as she stood there, the city alive with possibility, she knew her story was far from over. It was hers to write, on her terms and no one else's. 2 years had passed since Emma's life had taken its dramatic turn. The world she inhabited now bore little resemblance to the one she had left behind. Her PR firm, Elysian Strategies, had become one of the most sought-out agencies in the industry, known for taking on complex cases with empathy and precision. Emma's name was synonymous with resilience and reinvention, a living testament to the strength that could be forged in the fires of betrayal. On a crisp autumn afternoon, Emma stood in the community garden she had helped build for the shelter where she volunteered. Around her, women tended to flower beds and vegetable patches, their laughter mingling with the rustle of the leaves. Claire, one of the shelter's longest residents and now its director, approached Emma with a broad smile. "We're hosting a benefit gala next month," Claire said. "I was hoping you'd be our keynote speaker." Emma chuckled, brushing dirt from her gloves. "You sure you want me rambling on about empowerment again?" "You're more than a speaker, Emma," Claire said, her tone sincere. "You're proof that life can be beautiful after the storm. We all need to hear it." Emma nodded, her heart full. "I'd be honored." Later that evening, Emma returned to her apartment. She placed a single, freshly picked flower from the garden into a vase on her dining table. Its vibrant color stood out against the minimalist decor, a small reminder of growth and renewal. Her phone buzzed with a calendar reminder, dinner with Sophie. Sophie, her former assistant at the shelter, had recently started a small business of her own, a mobile catering service. Emma had been mentoring her, just as others had helped Emma find her footing. It was a full-circle moment that she cherished. As Emma got ready, she glanced at a framed photo on her desk. It was from the summit she had spoken at a year earlier, the moment her new life had truly taken flight. She was standing at the podium, mid-speech, her face radiant with purpose. Beneath the photo, a small plaque read, "The shadows remind us where we've been, but the light shows us where we're going." Emma smiled softly. Her story wasn't about what she had lost. It was about everything she had gained. She had stepped out of the shadows and into the light, and she wasn't going back. As Emma walked out the door to meet Sophie, the cool evening air greeted her, carrying with it the hum of the city. And that made it beautiful. Like an artifact, it can always be invisible without ever disappearing.